friends, and welcome to What the Fringe, the podcast dedicated to all things Fringe theater. I'm your host, Lauren Hantz. Each week, I visit with a Fringe artist to hear all about their endeavors and gain insight into their process. This week, I'm visiting with Ted Wenskus of Atlanta Fringe Audio. Fringe Audio is the podcast network of the Atlanta Fringe Festival, the only festival in the Fringe circuit to offer a platform for audio artists, featuring everything over the years from children's shows, true crime, audio drama, musicals, comedy, biographies, old-time radio, and uncategorizable weirdness. Atlanta Fringe Audio gives creators an innovative space to experiment with sound and storytelling and provide listeners a portal into the strange, the brilliant, and the beautifully bizarre.
Well, there are so many audio dramas and such out there. It has just exploded. There's thousands of them. There was once a time that I could keep up with what's out there. I simply can't anymore. I don't know, there's probably a few people who can, but I'm not one of them. But there are so many audio artists out there now that just having a public platform like this to celebrate and promote their work and just maybe give them some money in their pocket for their work, which in the audio drama business is, kind of a rarity. So it's just a beautiful little program.
Ted Wenskus is a playwright, theater voice actor, and sound designer who has worked on over 100 plus audio dramas and radio plays, including live stage performances, audio projects for the National Park Service, and titles for Audible. His own play, Take It or Weave It, co-written with Meredith Powell Carroll, won an Audioverse Award for Best Writing and earned national recognition in the Here Now Audio Fiction and Arts Festival, where it was presented in a live listening session. Ted has performed in the Rochester Fringe Festival several times as a voice actor, director, and live sound effects artist, building much of his sound effects kit from scratch. In short, his stage plays have been produced in England, Dubai, Australia, the Philippines, and throughout New York, earning a Tanis Award for playwriting in the process, as well as accolades in the Short and Sweet Festival in Dubai. Ted currently serves as Fringe Audio Award Coordinator for the Atlanta Fringe Festival and is pleased as punch to do so. Ted, welcome to What the Fringe!
Hello, Lauren. Hello.
I'm so excited.
How are you?
I'm great. How are you doing today?
Great.
Good. Well, I'm super excited to have you here. So we met at the Rochester Fringe last year because you were so kind to come to my show and you introduced yourself. So we became, fringy friends and Facebook friends and all of that, goofy stuff you do. And then I remember hearing about the Fringe Audio through Atlanta Fringe, and I missed the deadline. I don't know why it wasn't on my radar. I'm usually keen on those things. And I was like, oh, that would have been so fun to apply to. And then you reached out and was like, oh, hey, can we do some kind of collaboration? And I was like, yes, absolutely. We have to. This is a podcast. It's a listening platform. Let's talk about Fringe listening. So I'm so excited to talk about this.
Yeah, me too.
Okay, so first let's just talk about your journey as an artist. You do lots of things in theater. You're a writer, you're an actor, but you also seem to have a really big passion for sound and all of those elements of a production. So when did you realize sound was your jam?
Well, it was a gradual realization. I grew up listening to, I think some of the very first audio things that I listened to were like these superhero 45s that my mom got me when I was really young, these Superman and Batman stories and stuff like that. And they were just audio, there was no comic book associated with them. And just using your imagination, I just love this form of storytelling. And a couple of years later, NPR did a version of Star Wars that they put on Saturdays, 11 a.m. over here. And it was a serialized version of Star Wars in 13 parts. It was much longer, it was more detailed, and it was audio only, had a number of the original cast members on it. And it was just great. And then at 11:30, this other show came on, which I'd never heard of, but I kept listening to it. And this thing called The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, it's like, oh, I wonder what this is. And so I got into that just randomly because of programming. So that's I think that's where my interest in the audio, in listening to audio shows and such started. As an artist doing sound, that was a little more gradual. I started out as a playwright and started writing plays and such. And at some point, you come up with some play ideas that you just can't do on stage. It's just impossible. But if it's audio only, sky's the limit. You know, your budget is pretty unlimited. So as a storyteller, audio just opened up that door. You know, this was a time, about 15 years ago, before the main upsurge of podcasting came in. But there were still, these core forums and such on Facebook and these audio drama groups that I joined, and I started, auditioning for voice parts. And, I managed to get some. So I got to see how the production side was put together, but from an actor standpoint. And then from there, I just started putting together, okay, now that I have a feel for it on this end, let's start putting together my own and learning the process there. And that's how I generally got started in audio. But it made a leap onto stage in our Fringe Festival. We had this theater group called Screenplays, and they specialize in doing stories from the 1930s, 40s, and 50s, full plays or whatnot. And one year, the director got the script for the 39 Steps as a radio play. And she hadn't done a radio play live before, either had I. And doing one on stage, it's like, oh, that sounds really interesting. I'm totally down for that. And so we did that. It was a sold-out performance at the Eastman House, the George Eastman House here in Rochester. And it was just a great experience. And at that point, I was just a voice actor, so I didn't really get into the sound effects thing until the next Fringe performance, because Karen Tuccio, the director, went, this went off really well. I want to do another one. So we did another one, did a vintage Hitchcock one. That one went off well as too. And that one, I was put on the sound effects kit because the original sound effects person wasn't available. And I found that to be really fascinating. That was a whole different aspect of audio art that I'd not experienced or tried before. That just started the ball rolling for me to do other radio plays. She did another one called The Man with Bogart's Face at another Fringe Festival. We've had some other artists do some original radio plays as well. Did Frankenstein, not for Fringe, but it was still a live radio play. So it just kind of, that aspect just kind of escalated.
It's been like a lifelong journey for you, starting as a kid, listening to those records your mom got you in Star Wars. That's super, super cool. Where do you find all of your tools to make the sounds?
Well, there's a progression. First, I look around the house. Do I have it? Do I have shoes? Do I have the right kind of shoes? Because there's lots of shoes, and shoes make a lot of different noises. But basically, I just start around the house, go in the basement, see if I've got something that has a metallic sound that sounds like, I don't know, a squeaky wrench, or sound or something like that. Then I go to my mom's basement. That's the next step, because it's a much bigger basement with even more stuff and even older stuff. So I start there. And then flea markets. That's really my go-to for a lot of random things. And it is random. It is a crapshoot because you may go there and find nothing that you need. But if you do find something, it'll be cheap. And that's actually one of the great things about Foley sound effects, because you'll get these, like let's say you've got a fishing reel or something like that, and you need that sound, that cranking sound or whatnot. You don't need a good one. You just need one that kind of works, So you can buy what other people consider junk for cheap, and that'll be the perfect thing that you need. And so like the whole buying process is completely different. And the other part of the buying process is you kind of audition your pieces. It's like you find something. It's like, ooh, I need a squeaky hinge. Is this one squeaky enough? Nope. how about this one? No, that's one, so you go through like this box of, 60 hinges, keep trying one. And I probably look mad, just totally mad.
I was about to say, do you look like that crazy guy just being like, what's going, and the vendors are like, what is going on with this guy? And you're like, I'm finding the right squeak. Give me a second.
I've never had to explain myself, but I've been looked at, where it gets odd is when you try shoes out to see what sound they make. That one's a really hard one to describe, to explain.
You're not trying them on. You're just like tapping them on the table. What is that guy doing?
It's like, I don't like the metal in this heel. That's too loud.
That's great.
And then other things I make, some sound effects you make with just the thing what they are, like if you want the sound of shoes, use shoes. There's sometimes it's not, a leap of creativity. It's just a matter of, going through and finding the right thing. Other times you need to create something from scratch. One of the classic ones is a wind machine. It's this large barrel crank machine, and it's got this very light fabric over it, kind of a silk-like fabric. And when you turn the crank, it makes this whooshing sound, and that is the sound of wind. And that's exactly how they've been doing that for a couple hundred years. That's a stage thing goes back into the 19th century, Victorian, early English 19th century theater. So some things I build like that with the help of plans. Sometimes I improvise things. I improvised the sound of a payphone once, because it's got a couple distinct sounds to it, because there's like the sound of a coin going in. Then there's a sound of a coin going down, like a little metallic, thing. And then there's a little bell, ding. And then there's the sound of the coin, going into being deposited into the rest of the coins. So I found this little metallic bucket, made a little channel for this coin to go by, and then put one of those little desk bells on it. And you roll the coin down on it, and it can go wrong. It has about a 70% success rate. So you roll the coin down, it strategically hits the desk bell, bounces off, and lands into the coins underneath, and you get all that sound in just a brief second. And it's so cool, and it's gone in an instant. It's like a lot of work for just that one thing, but that one thing is really cool.
It's really cool. Is it like when you perform these live shows with the sound effects, is that kind of taken into account the sound that you're going to hear? Like, we've got this really cool phone. Ching-a-ding-ding-ding-ding. I should not be a sound effects person. But is that taken into account of like how the audience is experiencing the show, that they does focus ever shift just ever so slightly to see how the effect is made because it's such a special thing that's happening? Or is it just the audience will look over there if they're interested?
They pay attention to us. Actors reading a script on a stage, they've seen that before. And, it's one of those things. I apologize to actors. It's like, they're going to be looking at us if we're doing sound effects. That's just the way it is, because we're doing something really interesting that you don't see every day. We totally steal the spotlight, at least visually. But the thing is, a radio play is audio, so you shouldn't really need to be looking at the actors. You should just be listening. And if a radio play is well put together, you won't miss anything by not looking at an actor or not looking at a sound effect. As long as the sound effect sounds good, you don't need to see how it's done. It's just interesting how it's done. So yeah, we totally steal the spotlight there.
Nice. Well, let's move on a little bit to Fringe Audio itself here at the Atlanta Fringe. So you have a fun way of how you got involved with it. So tell me how you first came in contact with Atlanta Fringe Audio, and then we'll go from there. So
I'm doing all these live shows, but at the same time, I'm also, recording some shows as well. And the first one that I recorded, Take It or Weave It, it's a comic fantasy, half hour, very, very, very funny. Came out really well. I recorded it with local actors in a studio. And I submitted it to the Atlanta Fringe Festival because they were, I was looking for places that would host things like this, where can I find a listenership apart from saying up a website and YouTube channel and all that stuff. I was looking for a festival. And I happened to find Atlanta Fringe. And I went, oh, well, this is cool. I've never heard of a Fringe festival doing this before. So I submitted it. Hey, got in. This was in 2018, so it was a little smaller. There were only 12 shows at that time. Got in, fun time. There was no cash awards, no Critics' Choice Awards, anything like that. I think there was an audience favorite award. Whoever got the most listens wins. And I think that was it, which was cool. And that was a great experience. Fast forward a couple of years to 2020, and we all know what happened in 2020. The pandemic happened, which closed down all theater, all Fringe festivals for months and months and months and months. And the Atlanta Fringe Festival is in June, and everything shut down in just March. So that Fringe didn't happen. But they just happen to have this Fringe audio program ready to go that is not affected at all, because it's all being done remotely. So that went on just as planned, and probably with a few more resources put around it because everyone else was suddenly not busy. And at that time, because there were some more resources and such available, they decided to add some more components to it. They expanded it, and they also added this Critics' Choice Award that instead of just a nice little plaque or nice little graphic or something like that the festival will give out cash to the winner as chosen by some judges. Well, they need some judges. And it so happened that Jessica Butterford, the Fringe Audio Director, reached out to me and went, "You've had a good time, with us," and I kept in touch and such like that. "Would you be interested in being one of our Critics' Choice judges?" And I went, "Sure, I'm not doing anything else that's for sure." So I got to be a judge, from the very first instance of their Critics' Choice panel. That was a great experience too. Did that for a few years. Fast forward a couple more years to 2023. And Jessica reaches out again and says, you really like this judging thing. Would you like to be in charge of the whole Critics' Choice Award program? And I said yes. So, and that is where I am today.
I love that journey that's like going from performer to kind of coordinating the whole thing and incorporating so many of your loves as an artist. So tell me, you have these Critics' Choice and you've got some really great judges for this year. So where do you find judges and who's your lineup for this year?
Since I've been in so many audio circles for so long, I just know people. That was a big help. Some projects that I worked on. There was a project that I worked on for the National Park Service. That there's an artist in residence who did an audio drama for Badlands National Park. I reached out to her and went, hey, you know audio, and she actually teaches audio drama in England at a university level. So I reached out to her and was like, we have this, and you definitely would be a great addition to the judge lineup. So she accepted. She's been doing it for a couple of years. There's a couple SAG voice actors. I got involved with audiobooks, multicast audiobooks on Audible, reached out to a couple producers of those, got them on board. Another university professor that teaches sound design. So just lots of different areas of all the different, from writing to sound to voice acting. I got someone who specializes in musicals this year to add on to, because we have a couple of musicals in our lineup this year. So just taking just reaching out to all these different artists and experts in all these different audio areas and bringing them together for our little program.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you this question because I have opinions, but I want to hear from you of why do you think Fringe audio itself is so important? I think it is, but I want to hear from you why this art form should be celebrated and continued. Well,
there are so many audio dramas and such out there. It has just exploded. There's thousands of them. There was once a time that I could keep up with what's out there. I simply can't anymore. I don't know, there's probably a few people who can, but I'm not one of them. But there are so many audio artists out there now that just having a public platform like this to celebrate and promote their work and to maybe give them some money in their pocket for their work, which in the audio drama business is, kind of a rarity. So it's just a beautiful little program. It's really, really close to my heart. There is so much you can do to it. The variety of shows that we get every year that goes from, old time radio, like musicals, as I mentioned. We get some stand-up comedy. We get some just audio soundscape sort of performance art. It's just all over the place. And that's great. That's what makes it super fringy, because it is just, we take audio, what you got? And we get a huge variety of options and really interesting things to listen to.
That's exciting. I mean, I feel like that, like you're saying, the audio drama and podcast is kind of taking a resurgence, from the time that people would sit down and listen to the radio, and then television came, and now everything's so personalized, and we put our headphones on and our earbuds, and then we can be transported to another world. And so it's really exciting to see the Atlanta Fringe embrace that kind of artistic creation and do it in a fringy way. I love it.
What's really cool is they've been doing it since 2011. They got on board very, very early. So it's really seeing, looking in the crystal ball and adding something unique to the Fringe Festival circuit.
Amazing. So we're going to take a little break from our interview, and we're going to hop over to our Fringe Audio Artist Favorite Award, Howl by Allison Cossitt. So first up, we're going to hear the trailer.
Island Media presents Howl.
They would always tell me, don't go into the woods, child.
A story of friendship. You're from town, aren't you? Don't you know you're not supposed to be in the forest alone? A story of defiance.
She will learn to live on her own, or she will die.
A story of strength.
I rend the world with my voice. I howl.
A story of love.
I throw my arms around her neck, burying my tears in her fur. For a moment, time stands still, and I know what happiness feels like.
Howl. A fully immersive audio experience that will stay with you long after its last breath fades. Howl will be available on May 20th at atlantafringe.org.
That was the Howl trailer from Allison Cossitt. Allison is a voice actor who realized she had an incredible opportunity to create her own audio dramas using her brilliantly skilled friends who are also voice actors. Then it turned out she really likes audio production as well as a result of that. And she has created Ilum Media Productions. She loves telling stories that evoke an emotional response and is thrilled that Howl was voted artist favorite at the Atlanta Fringe Festival. She loves rats and has no appendix. Allison, I love that fact. Welcome to What the Fringe.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Yeah, I love that trailer. I know that this is like kind of a dark fairy tale, but it feels like thriller-ish as well. Like it's kind of got this little spooky overtone, and I love that. So what inspired you to write Howl, this very kind of dark fairy tale that's also very empowering, if I can let the cat out of the bag in that?
It kind of depends on how political we can get, because really the bones for it came to me on the morning of November 5th when I was just very, very scared for many people in my circle. All the marginalized voices that will be silenced or will be, told not to speak up during the next, 4+ years in our country. And so from that depths of great fear and darkness, I wanted to tell a story about encouraging people to speak up and find their voices, and the importance of being the advocates for people who maybe can't speak up. And that's really what it came from, is just that feeling of fear and dread for people that I love.
I don't know if all of audio dramas have so much underscoring, but this one had really beautiful underscoring and sound effects. And talk to me about the kind of thought behind that and how that works in the audio drama world, and then your process as well about creating all of that beautiful ear candy that we hear?
Well, one of the things I love about audio drama is that it's still very nascent stages. And so you can do things, you can do a lot of experimentation with it. And most audio drama that is going on right now is a little bit more structured. It's more like watching a movie or a TV show. I do have a full audio drama in itself with like a whole season called Partial Veil, and that's on that side. It's definitely more kind of like standard. So for Howl, I knew I wanted to do something because it is a standalone. It has companion pieces to it, but Howl in itself is a standalone piece. And I knew that I wanted to make it fully immersive, and I have a website subscription where I can get music and sound effects, and the music on it is tremendous. Like, I never expected that. Like, signing up for it, I was just here for the sound effects, man. But the music, it was also beautiful, and I took pieces that stood out to me, and then this magic happened because I just chose pieces that I thought, oh, this might be good. And then I put them all into my audio workstation, totally random. And most of the time, it worked out perfectly. Like, there were moments that would happen and the music would kind of mirror it. And I was just like, this is spooky. This is giving me goosebumps. And it all worked out so, so well.
What tips do you have for people that are interested in Fringe audio? I know they kind of just do a first come, first serve basis. So you'll have producers like yourself that have done a lot. And then I'm sure there's producers who are trying it out for the first time. So what kind of tips can you give us?
I think if this is something you're drawn to, then that's the wonderful thing about a Fringe like this, is that it really does. It wants everybody from all sorts of different levels, and it's the stories that you want to tell. One of the things I love about audio drama right now is that there is nobody saying, oh, it has to be like this and you have to do this kind of story. I loved listening through some of the other stories of just like the variety of what was out there. So audio drama doesn't have to look like just one thing. You know, it can be something like Howl, where there's lots of music and it's very emotional and very powerful. Or it can be just like a silly, fun celebration of whatever story you want to tell. But I think having that heart and that drive to tell it, because it really is a lot of work. You know, you think it's just like, oh, we'll have people speak in front of microphones and then we'll, all put it together and bing, bang, boom. But it is so much more than that. But if it's something you're interested in, and for me, it makes me feel so alive. When I think of something in my head and I'm able to get my actors to record it, and then I put sound effects and music in and it all comes to life. Like, there were moments where I would just like drop to my knees in my booth and I'm like, yes, this is it. And that's why I do it. And that's the absolute excitement of it. So if anybody is interested at all, start doing that. Follow that breadcrumb trail. And there are so many good resources out there if you're interested in this kind of thing. You just got to keep searching until you find all the right ones, and then it'll all come together and you can make some magic.
Oh, well, thank you so much for that. And that's my passion of like, just make good art, be passionate about it.
Yes. And that's everything that I do. I really try to make it into art. And I think that's, if I could say anything, like, that's why my stuff, I think, tends to shine and have people notice it, is because I'm not just being like, oh, I'm going to just tell a story. But to me, it's like, I want to evoke that response. I want to make it into something that elevates everyday life.
Awesome. Well, Allison, thank you so much for joining us today on What the Fringe.
Absolutely. It was super, super cool. I'm so absolutely honored to have been voted artist favorite. Like, it's really spectacular. Thank you.
Well, I loved hearing everything that Allison had to say, and I am super duper looking forward to binging all of the Fringe audio episodes this year and then putting that podcast on my device so that I can go back and listen to all the ones from the past, because it is a very, very exciting program. I'm glad that you guys make that available for folks. I want to ask you my ending question that I love to ask all my guests. What's been your most interesting or awkward Fringe interaction that you've had? Fun little story.
It'll be a live sound effects story, because things go wrong and break. And like, when you've got a huge when you have such a variety of things, you have to play maintenance and keep, and you know, there's a lot of work to keeping your sound effects kit up and running. But this particular story was for Frankenstein radio play. And we created this we found some blueprints in this 1950s radio sound effects book. And it's this kind of, I don't quite know what to call it, but I call it a glass crasher. And basically it's like this kind of, it's about 3 feet tall, about 18-inch square. And there's mesh on all 4 sides and a lid on the top. And inside the lid are some nails. And what you do is you put a piece of glass in there, and at the right time, the right dramatic time during the radio play, you bring that down and the glass smashes and falls safely into the box that has a little drawer at the bottom for easy cleanup afterwards. It's really very cleverly designed. They knew what they were doing in the 50s. So was in the play, did this brand new thing, just got it from my friend's woodworking shop, eager to try it out. Yeah, this is going to be great. No one will be expecting this. The moment comes, Frankenstein's breaking through a train window and stuff near the end of the play. Big dramatic moment. And I sneakily put the piece of glass into the glass crasher. And the moment comes, and I toss the lid down, and it goes tink and bounces off the glass. And it's like, did not see that coming. This thing has one job. Its one job is to break glass.
It's called the glass crasher.
Exactly. So it's one of those instances where it's, in my mind, it seemed to like go on forever, but it was probably just an instant because, I grabbed the lid and, and really hammered it down a second time. It didn't work the second time, but it worked the third time. So in that rule of 3, it's actually sounded okay during the performance, clink, crash. But at the time, it was utter panic because it's like, well.
Right. And it's like not a comedy. You're like, this is a dramatic part of the show. We've got to have it crack.
Yep.
But that makes sense too. Everything worked out. It was like clink, clink, and then crash. That's really a nice, lovely outcome.
And my lesson from that is to get the crappiest glass that you can find. You don't want anything good. You want garbage glass, that you look at it funny and it breaks. That's exactly what you want.
Oh, so good. Well, Ted, thank you so much for joining me today on What the Fringe. It's been a delight to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me and collaborating with Atlanta Fringe because, if a podcast about Fringe doesn't belong in a Fringe audio program, I don't know what does,
Atlanta Fringe Audio is live right now with 21 free streaming shows ranging from comedy and musicals to horror, sci-fi, and more. To binge all of this year's productions, just visit atlantafringe.org/fringe-audio, or you can find the Atlanta Fringe Audio Show wherever you enjoy your podcasts, so please go check them out. Keep up with the Atlanta Fringe and Fringe Audio on Instagram at ATL Fringe Fest and on Facebook at Atlanta Fringe Festival. Learn more about Allison on her website at AllisonCossitt.com and on her production website, Ilem Media Productions, and that is spelled YLEM. You can keep up with Allison on Instagram at Allison Cossitt and on TikTok at Allison Cossitt BO. I will have all of those linked in the show notes because there are all kinds of interesting spelling, so please check those out. What the Fringe is produced and hosted by me, Lauren Hance. This episode was edited by Ben Ellis of Renowned Media, and those sweet tunes you hear are provided by Paul Snyder of Orchestra of Sound, and our logo was designed by Ruby Arnold of Ruby Makes Things. What the Fringe can be found on your favorite podcast platforms and now on YouTube. Be sure to hit that subscribe button so you can stay in the know when new episodes release. Keep up with What the Fringe on Instagram at whatthefringe_productions and find us online at whatthefringeproductions.com. Being a touring Fringe artist is not always as sexy as it sounds. Sometimes you spend hours searching for the perfect suitcase. It has to be light enough and big enough to hold all the stuff for your show and have wheels that don't break. And before you know it, you are spending hours asking yourself,
is this one squeaky enough? Nope.